The asteroid field arrived with the force of a drunken astrophysicist stumbling into a sobriety meeting. Ethan Blake had mere seconds to reflect on the irony of his career, rescuing valuable materials from perilous situations, while facing a cosmic predicament he couldn't escape. "Report," he snapped at the ship's AI, his hands flying over the neural interface. "Current survival probability? 17.3% and plummeting," the AI chirped, its cheerful tone oddly misplaced. "Would you like some calming music?" "I'd prefer an escape plan," Ethan gritted, wrestling the controls to avoid a space rock the size of a minivan. His extraction vessel, lovingly nicknamed Finnegan's Folly, groaned under the strain. Their mission, retrieving rare isotopes from a defunct planet's orbit, had been routine. The universe, however, had other ideas. Captain Reynolds's voice crackled over the comm, "Engine room's hit. We're losing." The transmission ended in static. Ethan's gut clenched as Finnegan's Folly spun violently. Emergency lights painted the cockpit red. He watched helplessly as the cargo bay detached, taking half his crew with it. Calculating optimal escape trajectory, the AI announced. "Also, your heart rate is elevated. Should I be concerned?" "Not now, Finn," Ethan muttered, pushing the remaining engine beyond its limits. Explosions rocked the ship. Warnings cascaded across his neural feed. When the chaos subsided, Ethan was alive, alone, and deeply annoyed. The cockpit was eerily silent except for Finn's occasional commentary about system failures and their dwindling chances of survival. "Full scan," Ethan ordered, running a hand through his dark hair. "Any other survivors?" "Negative. However, I am detecting an unusual distress signal, approximately 3 kilometers off our port bow," Finn reported. "Source unknown. Design, definitely not human." Ethan squinted at the debris field. "Give me a vector." He steered the crippled ship toward the signal, pushing aside thoughts of the crew he'd lost. The distress beacon originated from a sleek, alien vessel, its hull breached in multiple locations. As Ethan drew closer, Finn helpfully pointed out that boarding an unknown alien craft violated numerous regulations. "Add it to my tab," Ethan muttered, securing his emergency suit. The alien airlock opened surprisingly easily to his override codes. Inside, eerie blue emergency lights illuminated the scene. That's when he saw her. Unconscious amidst the wreckage, her form was humanoid, but her skin was a shade of green that was both exotic and strangely familiar. Even in the dim light, she was captivating. Ethan realized he'd forgotten to breathe. "Well," Finn's voice crackled through his suit comm, "I suppose this answers the age-old question of whether aliens can be interesting." "Not now, Finn." Ethan knelt beside the unconscious woman. His scanner analyzed her condition. "She's losing whatever the equivalent of blood is for her species." "Might I suggest not doing anything rashly heroic?" Finn chimed in. Ethan was already preparing his emergency regenerator. Too late for that. He injected himself, watching as his blood filled the device's reservoir. Sometimes, he thought, the most reckless option was the only one left. He applied the modified regenerator to her wound. Her eyes fluttered open, the color of amber with flecks of gold. She focused on him with a look of alarm. "You," she whispered, her voice melodic, "you don't understand what you've done." "I hear that a lot," Ethan replied, aiming for reassurance but landing closer to sarcasm. "I'm Ethan." "And you are?" "Serafina," she managed before her eyes rolled back and she lost consciousness again. But not before Ethan noticed the subtle luminescence pulsing beneath her skin. "Finn," he said, lifting the unconscious alien with unexpected care, "I have a feeling we just complicated our lives. Shall I calculate the probability of this ending badly, or should I just assume 100%? Finn replied. Ethan grinned. "Let's split the difference and hope for the interesting the dot." As he carried Serafina back to his ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that interesting was an understatement. The universe, after all, had a knack for ensuring that no good deed went unpunished, and judging by the way Serafina's skin was now emitting patterns resembling an aurora, this punishment promised to be spectacular. Back in the relative safety, if one could call a crippled spaceship in the middle of a debris field, safe, of Finnegan's Folly, Eric tended to the unconscious alien woman. The medical bay, small and functional, felt decidedly inadequate with an otherworldly goddess gracing its single medical bed. Murphy, ever the helpful AI, dimmed the lights to what it deemed romantically appropriate emergency care levels, and promptly began its analysis. "I'm detecting unusual biochemical reactions," Murphy announced, its synthesized voice echoing in the confined space. "Also, might I suggest your prolonged staring is bordering on unprofessional?" "I'm monitoring the patient," Murphy, Eric defended, though he couldn't deny the mesmerizing shimmer of Liana's green skin. The shifting light patterns reminded him of some abstract art piece, if said art piece had decided to become inexplicably captivating. "Of course you are," Murphy replied dryly. "Just as I'm only running 17 different analyses on her unique biological signature for purely scientific reasons." Liana stirred, her movements graceful even in unconsciousness. The medical scanner beeped insistently, displaying readings that made as much sense as a politician's promise. "Her cellular structure is reorganizing," Eric muttered, frowning at the data. "Murphy, what am I looking at?" "Well, according to these readings, your blood has triggered some sort of dormant genetic sequence. Think of it as giving an espresso to a supercomputer that's been running on standby mode for centuries." Liana's eyes snapped open, fixing on Eric with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You're still here," she said, her voice resonating in a way that seemed to bypass his ears and head straight for his core. "Where else would I be?" Eric managed, striving for professional detachment despite the way her presence seemed to fill the small medical bay. She sat up with fluid grace, the movement triggering another cascade of shimmering light across her skin. "Running far, far away, like any sensible being would." "I've never been accused of being sensible," Eric replied, checking her vitals more from a need to occupy his hands than any actual medical necessity. "How are you feeling?" "Like my entire genetic structure is rearranging itself because a ridiculously handsome human decided to play hero," she stated matter-of-factly. Then, as if realizing the implications of her words, she added, "The biochemical changes are affecting my verbal filters." Eric felt his ears flush. "Ridiculously handsome? We're dealing with a complete biological reformation, and you're focusing on the compliment." "It's easier than dealing with the implications of a complete biological reformation," she admitted. "Want to tell me what's actually happening to me?" Liana stood, moving with a grace that made Eric suddenly very aware of the limited space in the medical bay. "My people, we're engineered. Every aspect of our biology is regulated, especially." She trailed off, her skin flushing a deeper emerald. "Especially reproduction." She finished, her voice barely a whisper. "Your blood, it's acting like a key, unlocking everything they suppressed. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" "Murphy, care to calculate the danger level?" "Current situation ranks somewhere between disarming a nuclear bomb and explaining quantum physics to a toddler," the AI helpfully supplied. Liana's laugh was unexpected and musical. "Your AI has an interesting perspective." "Murphy has delusions of being a comedian," Eric said, then froze as Liana stepped closer, her scent reminding him of a summer night under a canopy of stars. "You should be terrified," she whispered, close enough now that he could see the gold flecks in her eyes shifting like cosmic dust. "Instead, your pulse is elevated for entirely different reasons." "Professional curiosity," Eric managed, the word sounding weak even to his own ears. "Liar," she smiled, then swayed slightly. "Though perhaps we should discuss this after the room stops spinning." Eric caught her as she stumbled, trying to ignore how perfectly she fit against him. "Maybe you should rest some more. Maybe you should stop being so." She gestured vaguely at all of him. "Distracting." "I'm not the one glowing like a celestial being," Eric countered. "Actually," Murphy interjected, "your biometrics suggest you're both equally distracted." "Murphy!" Eric snapped. "Privacy mode." "Fine," the AI sulked. "I'll just be over here calculating the probability of this situation ending in either disaster or an interspecies romance novel." Liana laughed again, then winced. Your AI might be right about both outcomes. Her expression turned serious. They'll be looking for me now. My people don't appreciate having their careful genetic programming disrupted. Let them look, Eric said, helping her back to the medical bed. I'm good at making things disappear. And terrible at following regulations, she observed. Would a regulation follower have given you his blood? Point taken, Eric conceded. She settled back, her eyes growing heavy. Eric? Yes, Liana? When I'm not about to pass out, we should discuss why your genetic structure is so absurdly compatible with mine. I look forward to that completely professional, scientific discussion, he said, trying not to smile. Liar, she murmured again, drifting off to sleep. Eric watched the patterns of light dance across her skin for a moment longer than strictly necessary. Murphy? Yes, Captain? Obviously smitten. Plot a course to the furthest outpost you can find, and maybe look up some research on interspecies genetics while you're at it. Already done, Murphy replied smugly. Though I suggest we focus on staying alive long enough for that research to be relevant. As if in answer, the ship's proximity alerts began to wail. Eric's smile faded as he checked the readings. Multiple ships approaching. Non-human design. Liana stirred in her sleep, her skin pulsing with new patterns that seemed almost like warning signals. Well, Eric sighed, heading for the bridge. At least we won't have to wait long to meet the family. The pursuing Arcanian vessels, sharp angles against the void, looked less like a welcoming committee and more like an angry geometry lesson. You know, Anya, Daniel remarked, expertly dodging a chunk of debris that seemed to exist in 3 places at once, when I pictured meeting your family, I had more awkward dinner in mind, and less a genocidal cubism. Anya, now fully recovered and occupying the co-pilot seat with preternatural grace, gave him a look that managed to be both exasperated and amused. My people take genetic purity very seriously. Though I'll admit, this response seems a tad over the top. Over the top? Murphy's synthesized voice chimed in. They just deployed a quantum-based reality distortion field. I'd categorized that somewhere between showing off and an existential threat. The ship lurched as the fabric of space-time decided to take a brief holiday from conventional physics. Daniel's stomach did a complicated flip-flop. Oh, that's a new one, Anya commented, her skin pulsing with patterns that seemed to mirror the space-time distortions outside. They usually save the reality warping for religious festivals. I'm almost flattered. Daniel expertly navigated them through a debris field that seemed to be experiencing several different time zones simultaneously. Glad someone's having fun, he muttered. Murphy, ETA to that abandoned research station? Approximately 7 minutes, assuming we survive the next 3, Murphy replied. Also, Captain, your passengers' biochemical readings are becoming increasingly noteworthy. Daniel glanced at Anya. The light patterns on her skin were mesmerizing, taking on an almost hypnotic quality. She caught his gaze and smiled, making his neural implants tingle. Side effect of the awakening, she explained. Then, with studied nonchalance, you might want to avoid prolonged eye contact for the next few hours, unless you're interested in some rather intense telepathic feedback. Define intense, Daniel asked, keeping his eyes fixed on the controls. Imagine that moment when reality decided to take a vacation. Like that, but more personal. Murphy helpfully projected a graph showing their exponentially rising biochemical compatibility. I've calculated the probability of you two maintaining professional distance. Care to hear the results? No, they said in unison. The ship shuddered as another reality wave washed over them. Daniel's hands flew across the neural interface, compensating for physics' temporary lapse in sanity. You know, he remarked, most first dates involve dinner and a movie, not violating the fundamental laws of space-time. Boring, Anya declared, her hands joining his on the controls with uncanny synchronization. Besides, nothing builds intimacy like shared near-death experiences. Is that what we're building? The look she gave him could have melted glacier. Murphy cleared its electronic throat. Not to interrupt what is clearly a tender moment, but we've arrived at the station. Also, our pursuers have deployed quantum-entangled hunter-killer drones. Of course they have, Daniel muttered, initiating a docking sequence that was technically impossible but practically necessary, given the circumstances. The abandoned research station, a sprawling monument to humanity's tendency to build things in space and then forget about them, loomed before them. As they approached, Anya's skin pulsed with new patterns, more complex, more urgent. "The station shielding should hide us temporarily," she said, then added with a hint of embarrassment, "though it might not hide other things." Other things? The awakening is entering its second phase. It's becoming more assertive. Murphy helpfully displayed another graph. According to my calculations, the station's atmosphere will be saturated with interspecies pheromones within approximately 3 hours. I've taken the liberty of compiling several appropriate romantic soundtracks. Murphy. Daniel growled. Privacy mode. Fine, the AI sulked. I'll just be over here calculating the thermodynamic implications of all this unresolved tension. They docked with minimal catastrophe, which Daniel considered a win. The station's corridors were dark and dusty, emergency lights casting long, eerie shadows. Their footsteps echoed, suggesting the architecture had a casual relationship with acoustics. "Home sweet abandoned research facility," Daniel quipped, leading them towards what his scans indicated was a secure command center. "Anyone else feel like we're in the setup for a horror story?" Anya laughed, the sound reverberating strangely through the station. "Trust me, what's hunting us is far worse than any horror story monster. They're bureaucrats." "The most terrifying force in any civilization," Daniel agreed, then stopped as Anya swayed slightly. "You okay?" "Just..." She steadied herself against a wall, her skin now a canvas of shifting, complex light patterns. "The second phase is stronger than I expected. Your proximity isn't helping. Should I back off?" "Don't you dare." The abandoned research station, a testament to humanity's forgotten ambition in the vastness of space, hummed with a newfound energy. Anya's discovery that the station wasn't just a relic, but a key to unlocking the suppressed potential of her people, had ignited a spark of hope in the face of their increasingly dire situation. Daniel, ever the pragmatist, was more focused on the rapidly approaching Arcanian hunter-killer drones, which seemed determined to ensure that any rewriting of history remained strictly hypothetical. "So," he remarked, trying to sound casual while simultaneously rerouting power to the station's ancient defense systems, rewriting the genetic destiny of 2 species before lunch. "That's ambitious." Anya, her skin pulsing with patterns that seemed to mirror the complex equations scrolling across the holographic displays, just smiled. "My people have always had a flair for the dramatic. Though I'll admit, this is a bit more theatrical than even I anticipated." "Theatrical?" Murphy's synthesized voice chimed in. "They're deploying a chrono-disruption field. That's less theater and more the existential threat with a side of temporal paradox. The station lurched as time itself seemed to hiccup. Daniel felt a brief, disorienting sensation of being in multiple places at once. "That's a new one," Anya commented, her skin now shimmering with a new intensity. "They usually reserve the time bending for religious ceremonies. I must be more important than I thought." "Glad someone's enjoying this," Daniel muttered, focusing on stabilizing the station's power core, which seemed to have a casual relationship with conventional energy flow. "Murphy, any updates on that escape plan?" "Calculating," the AI replied. "However, current probabilities suggest our best option involves utilizing the station's unconventional capabilities." Anya, now radiating an almost palpable energy, approached the central console. The patterns on her skin intensified, forming complex configurations that interacted with the station's ancient systems. "This station," she breathed, her voice resonating with a newfound power, "it's more than just a research facility. It's a conduit. A way to reconnect with our original genetic potential." "You mean before the bureaucrats decided everyone needed to be genetically identical?" Daniel asked, trying to keep his voice light despite the increasingly bizarre situation. "Precisely," Anya confirmed, her eyes now glowing with a fierce intensity. And I think I know how to use it. Murphy chose that moment to interrupt. Fascinating as this is, the chrono-disruption field is accelerating. Also, the station's life support systems are failing. I suggest we expedite this reconnecting with our original genetic potential thing. Agreed, Anya said, her hands moving with preternatural speed across the console. The patterns on her skin began to synchronize with the station's systems, creating a resonance that felt both ancient and utterly alien. Daniel, I need you to interface with the core matrix. It will require a direct connection. Define a direct, Daniel asked, cautiously approaching the console. Think of it as a very intense handshake with the universe, Anya explained, extending her hand towards him. Hesitantly, Daniel reached out. As their hands touched, a surge of energy flowed between them, connecting him to the station's core in a way that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. He could feel the ancient power flowing through him, intertwining with Anya's awakened biology, creating a connection that transcended mere physics. What's happening? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. We're rewriting the rules, Anya replied, her eyes blazing with an almost otherworldly light. And the universe is about to notice. The temporal field enveloped the station, twisting reality into a kaleidoscope of distorted possibilities. Within the chaos, Anya and Daniel worked in perfect synchronization, their interwoven bioluminescent patterns reflecting the complex equations cascading across the holographic displays. 3 minutes to critical mass, Anya announced, her voice resonating with the power of the station's awakened systems. And my genetic code is doing the CHA with the laws of biology. Daniel grinned, his own skin shimmering with the reflected light of their shared transformation. Just another Tuesday, then. Technically, Murphy interjected, its synthesized voice echoing through the station. Due to the temporal distortions, it's been Tuesday for the last 17 minutes. Also, incoming, Reality Enforcement Squad. Apparently, someone filed a noise complaint about our little physics experiment. Anya's eyes flashed with amusement. They really don't like it when you mess with their carefully curated timeline, do they? They take their paperwork very seriously, Daniel agreed, his fingers flying across the controls as he adjusted the station's energy flow to counter the incoming reality distortions. Ready to show them a new filing system? Always, Anya replied, her hands joining his on the controls, their bioluminescent patterns merging into a unified field of pulsating energy. Murphy, cue the soundtrack. Initiating broadcast, Murphy announced. Current selection, time and a bottle, followed by either final countdown. Though I'm open to suggestions for our potential extinction event playlist. As the ancient machinery reached a crescendo, Anya and Daniel focused their combined energy, channeling the power of the station's core through their synchronized biology. The broadcast rippled outwards, reaching every Arcanian vessel in range, carrying the truth of their shared history, the suppressed potential of their intertwined destinies. On the pursuing ships, screens flickered to life, displaying not just data and historical records, but the living, breathing proof of Anya and Daniel's connection. Their interwoven bioluminescence, the complex patterns reflecting the truth of their shared genetic heritage, spoke a language older than their civilizations, a language of potential and possibility. The Reality Enforcement Squad, faced with undeniable evidence that their entire understanding of genetic purity was a carefully constructed lie, did what bureaucrats throughout history have always done when confronted with inconvenient truths: they began filling out forms. You know, Daniel remarked, watching as the pursuing ships powered down their weapons, most couples worry about disapproving parents. We just rewrote the genetic destiny of 2 species. Anya laughed, pulling him into an embrace that made the temporal field shimmer around them. Boring, she declared. Though I do hope you realize this means you're coming to all future family reunions. They're going to be interesting. I'm sure the paperwork will be fascinating, Murphy sighed electronically. Speaking of which, the Arcanian High Council is requesting official documentation of your genetic synchronization. They've sent a form. It's approximately 7,000 pages long. As the temporal field dissipated and reality sheepishly returned to its normal operating parameters, Anya and Daniel stood together in the heart of the ancient station, their intertwined bioluminescence a testament to their bond, a beacon of hope for a future where love could rewrite the very fabric of existence. So, Daniel said, turning to Anya, his eyes reflecting the wonder of their shared journey, "What's next?" Anya's smile held the promise of 1,000 untold adventures. "Well, we could start with dinner. Though, given our track record, it will probably involve breaking a few more laws of physics." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Daniel replied, taking her hand. Murphy's voice, for once devoid of sarcasm, filled the station. "I've already made reservations at a nice quantum cafe. The menu exists in a superposition of states until you order. And I've prepared a playlist for your first official date, one that doesn't involve temporal manipulation or genetic revolution. Though I have included it time after time, just in case." And so, in the grand tradition of improbable love stories, Anya and Daniel embarked on their new life together, their intertwined bioluminescence a constant reminder that some connections transcend the limitations of biology and physics. Their tale became a legend, whispered across galaxies, a testament to the reality-bending power of love, and the bureaucrats, well, they're still working